The Streets of San Francisco, first airing in 1972, is often remembered as a classic police procedural rooted in the gritty realism of its era. Yet beneath its episodic structure and crime-solving format lies a deeper emotional terrain that makes the series enduringly relevant, particularly when examined through the thematic lens of Child of Anger, a concept that emerges repeatedly through its characters, cases, and the moral posture of its storytelling. At its core, the series is not merely about crimes committed on the streets of a famously cinematic city, but about emotional inheritance, about how frustration, neglect, social pressure, and unresolved trauma are passed from one generation to the next until anger becomes not just a reaction but an identity. Watching the series today, one becomes acutely aware that many of its perpetrators are not monsters, but people shaped by environments that offered little room for vulnerability or growth, and this is where the show distinguishes itself from more sensationalist crime dramas. Inspector Mike Stone, portrayed with stoic restraint, functions less as a heroic enforcer and more as a moral observer, someone who listens as much as he interrogates, and in doing so the series allows anger to speak rather than silencing it outright. One of the most striking patterns across episodes is how frequently young offenders are framed not as inherently violent, but as individuals cornered by circumstance, whether it be poverty, family dysfunction, racial tension, or institutional indifference. These characters are children of anger not simply because they are young, but because they inherit unresolved rage from parents, neighborhoods, and systems that fail to acknowledge them as fully human. In this sense, San Francisco itself becomes a character, a city of sharp contrasts where beauty and brutality coexist, amplifying emotional extremes rather than softening them. The camera often lingers on faces after confrontations, allowing silence to carry meaning, and these moments reveal how anger simmers long before it erupts into crime. From a personal critical perspective, what makes the series resonate is its refusal to simplify moral causality. Growing up watching reruns of similar police shows, I remember feeling that justice was always swift and clear, yet returning to the streets of San Francisco as an adult reveals a far more ambiguous ethical landscape, one that mirrors real life more closely than comforting fiction. Karl Malden's portrayal of Lieutenant Stone conveys a weary empathy that feels almost radical for its time, suggesting that authority figures can be firm without being cruel, attentive without being naive. His interactions with younger suspects often resemble conversations rather than confrontations, and this tonal choice subtly reinforces the idea that anger, when acknowledged, loses some of its destructive force. Comparing the series to later crime dramas, it becomes clear how influential its humanistic approach has been, yet few successors maintain the same balance between procedural discipline and emotional depth. Many modern shows either romanticize rage or reduce it to pathology, whereas The Streets of San Francisco treats anger as a social signal, an expression of unmet needs rather than an aberration. The recurring motif of generational conflict is particularly powerful, with parents often appearing as shadows rather than active guides, leaving young characters to navigate moral landscapes alone. This absence speaks volumes about the era's anxieties, reflecting post-Vietnam disillusionment and a growing mistrust of institutions. The title Child of Anger thus feels less like a single episode theme and more like an umbrella under which the entire series operates, capturing the notion that crime is frequently the last chapter in a much longer emotional story. Even the relationship between Stone and his partner illustrates this dynamic, as mentorship becomes a counterforce to inherited frustration, suggesting that guidance and presence can interrupt cycles of resentment. Ultimately, what elevates The Streets of San Francisco beyond nostalgia is its quiet insistence that understanding does not weaken justice but deepens it, and that anger, when listened to rather than suppressed, can reveal truths about society that statistics and arrests alone never could, making Child of Anger not only a thematic reading but a moral invitation to see crime as consequence rather than spectacle.